everyone can please take a seat, we're about to begin the service. Shh. Thank you. If you could please find a seat. Chad, can you tell the cantor we're about to begin? Do you see him? I'd like to request that for the remainder of the service, people please silence all electronic devices or cell phones. We're here this afternoon for the kfura, for the burial, the funeral service of a very special woman, a mother, a grandmother, a spouse, a friend, Dorothy Shakin, Zichronah Livracha, of most blessed memory. As is the custom here when we unfortunately officiate at funerals, the cantor and I begin with Psalm 23 in the Hebrew and the English. I call it my colleague and friend, and certainly no stranger to the Shakin family, who's been there, thankfully, for many smachot, for celebrations, Cantor Yossi Caravani, who will lead us in the Hebrew, chant for us Psalm 23.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בי נודה שירביצני, על מנוחות תנהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני, במאג לצדק למען שמו, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן, נגד צורריי, דשנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב החסד, ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
A Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit. Guide me in the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes, and you anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Just want to mention, it's also my custom that whenever I officiate at funerals, I always invite family members to come forward first and speak and share some memories and also some celebration about the person, right? A way to not only mourn them, but to memorize them, to memorialize them, to respect them, and to celebrate their life. So this afternoon is no exception to that. I'm going to be inviting up in this order. First, her sons, Dr. Eric Shakin, followed by Dr. Jeff Shakin. Then her grandchildren, Jillian, Chloe, and Miles, then her niece, Joan Bogarty, and then last but not least, her granddaughter, Ella Shakin. If anyone else wants to come up after that, please feel free.
Rabbatai. Friends, family, esteemed rabbis. How often have we heard the cliche, she's now in a better place? Today I propose the expression, we're in a better place because of Dorothy Shirley Shakin. Mom, forgive me. She wasn't too fond of the name Shirley, but my mother did have an impact on many people for the better. The end of Parsha Shemot last week, Moshe Rabbeinu complains to Hashem, Lama harayota la'am hazeh. Why have you mistreated the people before you? And at the beginning of the Parsha Vayera this week, V'yedaber Elokim el Moshe, Hashem used words of rebuke toward Moshe. And I read a very interesting commentary on it. The Hasidic Rav Yaakov Neiman said that Hashem doesn't do evil, Hashem does good. And he quoted the Baal Shem Tov as saying, when a person experiences adversity, they don't say this is bad, but rather they should say this is bitter. My interpretation is when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So too our mother would not succumb to challenges, but rise and conquer the challenges. For example, when she was a young girl, she conquered polio in her foot as a child. She would go daily, take the subway from the Bronx to Manhattan for special therapy by herself every day, and eventually she went on to win a beauty contest. She had saved at least 2 marriages with her direct intervention, very involved. She was unabatedly involved in the care of her sister, her mother, her father when they were very ill. And she's raised special needs son, along with her other 2 sons, with intense devotion. So the Parsha this week, outwardly describes the first 7 makot, the plagues, but what it's really about is freedom. Lord Sachs so eloquently stated in his essays on ethics about free will, that we should have the freedom to choose what's right and good path against the conformity. So too our mother has the freedom to express herself. Our mom was a true balabusta. She was such a righteous woman as a wife, sister, mother, and grandmother. Dorothy provided a moral compass for her children, her grandchildren. She was a true matriarch, keeping a Jewish home, bayat shalom, keeping family close with diplomatic discretion and tolerance. She always had an uncanny ability to identify everyone's strengths and midot, and she would compliment them. If we were workaholics, she would remind us to take a vacation. When looking at the grandchildren, if one child was a strong student, she would talk about school, or if another child had good language skills, she would say, use your mouthpiece. On a personal note, growing up, some children will call their mother by different pet names, mom or ima, but I would endearingly call her Zisa Devora, maybe because she just exuded this affection and love, sometimes tough love, but that's how I will always remember her. Our mother, blessed memory, will be an enduring legacy. Zisa Devora, I love you.
It was great, Eric. I don't have much to add. This is vodka. So on Monday, January 16th at about noon, our beautiful, sweet, compassionate mom took her last breath on this earth after a full and vibrant, almost 97 years. Our mother would be very pleased and honored to see that you all could make it here today to sharing this with us, as it was her family and friends who were the most important focus of her life. As Eric said, we're not here to mourn her death, we're here to celebrate her life. I think we'd all sign up for almost 97 years, but of course without the dementia. Dementia is a land where my mother lived. It was not who she was. At times it was a comfortable place where everyone is fine, no matter how long ago they had been dead. She would occasionally ask if her parents got the vaccine or if my father, who died in 1995, was okay. Each visit and phone call was different. I never knew what to expect. She retained some of her ingrained characteristics. She was most concerned about missing a birthday, anniversary, etc. She retained her gentle sweetness and consideration of others. She was always cheerful, happy, and appreciative with whatever she had. She maintained her dignity. At times she suffered, knowing the inevitable decline in her mental status. Fortunately, the terrain was not swiftly downhill, but it probably started well over 10 years ago when she was slowly taken from us. The disease strips people of their dignity and sometimes even their personality, replacing it with a deep vulnerability that's hard to observe. She was occasionally trapped in the throes of that terrible disease. She rarely had dementia episodes. One kind of funny story is that one day Eric was in the OR, I was in the office, and Eric had a message on his phone that her mother was in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. So he called me, so I called the aide and I said, I forgot which aide it was, and she said, your mother's fine. It was after breakfast, she wanted to take a nap, and she was a little scratchy, so I went downstairs to the coffee shop to get chicken soup. So as soon as the aide left, my mother snuck out of the apartment, went downstairs, told the concierge that the aide poisoned me, I can't breathe, call an ambulance. And 2 hours later, she forgot the whole incident. The more time one spends visiting dementia land, the more one pays attention to our own mortality. We all should take this as a lesson, rearrange priorities, and not put things off. It's a powerful and salient reminder not to take our good years for granted, for none of us know what's waiting tomorrow. Her generosity with her time, her energy, her advice, and in so many other ways provided invaluable support to a remarkable number of people. Over the years, I've heard many stories of her friends, relatives, neighbors, patients from when she helped my father in practice, and even strangers to whom my mother provided help and support in their times of need. She had a wonderful marriage from 1948 to 1995, 47 years. Our parents were inseparable best friends. When we were growing up, I remember her as being a powerhouse of energy and the person who friends and family relied upon. She managed my father's busy general practice, doing the appointments, billing, check-in and out, as well as being a medical assistant, the sigmoidoscopies, which I'm sure she didn't realize she signed up for when she got married. She frequently had dinner parties at her home for friends, medical associates, and family. Unfortunately, some of her recipes went with her to the grave, but she was really was a good cook. She was one of the few women who was able to drive into Manhattan and often drove friends to doctor's appointments. When her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, she took her all over for opinions and then for frequent treatments. This was repeated with her sister and father when they became ill. She was very busy with Gary, but always had time and energy for Eric, me, and friends and family. Whenever I had a crisis or difficult time, she would drop everything and be there 100% for me with the best judgment, advice, encouragement in a very appropriate way. When she had to, she was tough and gave me tough love, which helped me in the long run, but was difficult at the time. When being taught how to hold the sword in fencing, they compare it to a bird. Hold it too tight, and you kill it. Hold it too loosely, and it flies away. She knew when to be strict and when to give us freedom. There really are no words to describe the closeness with my mother. I know this because the slow, agonizing decline of the disease forces even the most optimistic and hopeful to think about and plan for this day. And as such, you start thinking about what you might say during a time like this. And after unsuccessfully putting pen to paper many times, I realized that there are no words. There are only feelings, indescribable feelings, feeling that make my heart burst and my whole being melt, because my mother was my insides. She is my insides, my guts, my confidence, my bravery, and my strength, my sensitivity, my compassion, my loyalty, and even my laughter. She was everything. She was my mother. She's the one who made sure I never went through a day of my life doubting that somebody loved me or doubting that somebody was proud of me. We'll be inspired every day to be better people by the memory of her warmth, her smile, her caring, and her unqualified love for all of us. She always found the best in everyone and in every situation. She was always positive and supportive, as well as understanding and sympathetic. She had the ability to make everyone feel comfortable, secure, and loved. Everyone thinks they have a great mom, but as kids, we knew we had a great mom because everyone else told us so. She mothered all our friends who came into our house, even those with perfectly good mothers. Several of my long-term friends would call her periodically until recently and were very upset to know of her demise. We were most fortunate to have had her in our lives. We're comforted in the knowledge that she had the opportunity to share many pleasurable experiences, especially to see Eric and me married. She never thought I would ever get married. And to see 6 grandchildren grow up. She absolutely adored Amy from the first moment she met her to the day she died. She would always talk about what an amazing cook Amy was and how proud she was of Amy's accomplishments as a physician. She was ecstatic to know that Jillian was engaged and adored Ryan. She was also very proud of Gary and happy to see him settled in YAI. Knowing that the people we've become is in no small measure her greatest tribute. Her illuminating contributions to her personality development will continue to glow and grow in our children. In conclusion, Eric, Gary, and I would like to acknowledge and thank our mom's aides, Carlene, Monique, Janice, and Jackie, who tag-teamed her care for many, many years. I sense that you all had a deep concern and love for her and went above and beyond. May her memory be a blessing and an inspiration for all she touched. Thanks.
One second. Oh, are you starting? No. Do I start? Oh, sorry. Can I look on here? Yeah. Hi. In the days since our grandmother's passing, our dad remarked that he was simply stunned that she was gone, that it had always seemed to him that she'd be around forever. I have to say, we 3 feel the same. Our grandma Dorothy was just always there. She'd send us birthday cards and gifts that always managed to arrive exactly on time, signed with love from both her and Gary, even through the last year of her life. She penned weekly letters to us at sleepaway camp, flowery handwriting. I lost my track. Oh, she was always available for a phone call, eager to lend her signature non-judgmental ear, her thoughtful advice always at the ready.
We only knew our grandma as a fiercely independent, resilient willow. resilient widow. Our Grandpa Bill was taken from us much too early before my second birthday, but she loved us enough for both of them. Among pairs of grandparents, she showed up anytime the opportunity arose to be there for us, whether it was a dance recital, grandparents' day at preschool, or hosting us for a last-minute sleepover. We knew how much she loved us. You can hear it in her voice the moment she heard us say hello over the phone or saw us approaching for a hug. Her entire affect changed. Her eyes sparkled, her smile widened, and she held out her arms as she exclaimed her signature effusive greeting, the same way she greeted me on Sunday, the last time I saw her. Despite visibly struggling to catch her breath, she kept saying, "Hi, Jillian, my beautiful girl."
Grandma was the most classy, elegant woman. She was always smiling, always the most gracious and thoughtful. She treated everyone with such intense kindness, you'd feel like you knew her for years after meeting her for the first time. And if you were lucky enough to really know her, you'd know the feeling of true and unconditional love.
Though dementia stole the polite, well-mannered woman we knew, at times it revealed a new side of our grandma that we simply fell in love with, a funny, frank, unfiltered version of herself. As our last Passover Seder together wrapped up and dessert was served, there was a giant basket of parved chocolate candies on the table in front of Grandma. The pioneer of the famous Shakin sweet tooth, Grandma grabbed piece after piece, remarking how sensational each bite was. Her dementia didn't let her brain catch up with her hand, and by the time we noticed, the basket was half empty. At Rosh Hashanah dinner last year, our parents' marriage came up a conversation. We reminded Grandma that our dad waited until he was 40 years old, almost 41, to get married. She was mad and kept shaking her head. "Why'd he hold out so long?" she repeated.
It was such a blessing to have a relationship with my grandma through my early adulthood. Our conversations grew more and more meaningful with each passing year. Though I'm devastated that she won't be here for my wedding this summer, it's like a punch to the gut knowing that she won't be by my side. I'm especially thankful that Grandma had the chance to get to know my fiance, Ryan. In fact, she's met him for the first time many times over the last 4 years. For how classy my grandma was, she really never let things slip. She was always so proper and had the best manners. But as the Alzheimer's progressed, she naturally became less so. One of the many times I introduced her to Ryan, she loudly said to me in front of him, "Oh, Jillian, he is so handsome," something that she would have blushed at years ago. She was the most incredibly selfless, and caring person, even without her memory. Each time I told her I was engaged, she would get so worried and asked if she sent us an engagement gift yet. We could have done very well with that. Grandma worried about herself last. When COVID threw our worlds upside down, she didn't leave her apartment for the better part of a year. Of course, the blessing of her dementia was that she didn't know exactly how much time had passed. But she knew something was wrong. Yet every time we spoke on the phone, she'd chat cheerfully about the weather and remark about how comfortable she was in her apartment, and then immediately pivot the conversation to us, never dwelling on the negative.
She lived to make others feel loved and seen, even strangers. Earlier this summer, Grandma was in the hospital for yet another bout of pneumonia. It was remarkable to watch her engage with the hospital staff. Even as uncomfortable and as in pain as she was, she flashed smiles at the nurses, made them laugh, and thanked them profusely for anything they did for her, even if it meant more discomfort.
Our relationship with our grandma took on new meaning in recent years as we laughed together, and no two roundabout conversations we had were ever exactly alike. Even with an unreliable memory, she was always so concerned about others and feared being a burden to anyone. She often begged our dad for a job in his office as a secretary or assistant, a job way beneath her given her decades of single-handedly managing our grandpa's busy medical practice. More than anything, she just wanted to be helpful.
Many of my recent conversations with Grandma centered on my dating life. With Jillian engaged, she was very eager to see me settle down as well. Every time I tell her that I remain single, her expression immediately changed. Rather than grow cloudy with concern, her eyes would widen and she'd nod, processing this information. After all, by the time she was my age, she was married with one child and another on the way. But despite the cultural differences of our generations, she was always so supportive of my decisions and offered sharp, honest advice. In fact, the best advice I've heard about finding love I received from her, not from my younger friends or my immediate family members, but from Grandma, just last summer. We were running through our usual conversation. I reminded her of my job, my apartment, and my life in New York. But when we arrived on the subject of my relationship status, her words grew especially thoughtful and coherent. "You have to go with them and see what they're like," she said. Be very particular. Don't give in to just anyone. You need someone very special because you live with them a long time. Don't settle for less. You're something special and you need someone special. As I carry Grandma's sage relationship advice close to my heart, I find myself thinking about her marriage. I was the first grandchild born in the aftermath of Grandpa Bill's untimely death, and especially having been named after him, I've always felt a hidden connection to him. I often wondered about what Grandma was like while Grandpa Bill was still alive. I'll forever be in awe of the strength and optimism that sustained her for over 26 years without him. Now, I'm comforted by the thought of them finally reunited, with Grandma proudly sharing memories of time spent with the grandchildren he never met and the young adults she watched us all become. The first notable quote I ever learned in my life, I heard from my dad, who lives his life according to its philosophy. A pessimist sees a calamity in every opportunity, but an optimist sees an opportunity in every calamity. I'm now realizing that this resonated so strongly with my dad because Grandma Dorothy embodied it first, living by example, choosing positivity every single day of her life, all the way to its end. Our grandma's impact on the three of our lives is infinite. Our mutual love of traveling the world, embracing city living, and indulging in chocolate in all its forms are directly inherited from her. Though she is no longer with us, the legacy of her kindness, humility, and unconditional love lives on in all of us and will expand beyond us as we too start families of our own. We are so grateful to have had the privilege to love and learn from our beloved Grandma Dorothy. Our lives will not be the same without her. Thank you.
Lots and lots of people have aunts. If your parent has a sister, you have an aunt. That's pretty common. But how many people have an aunt that they can say plays a truly important role in their life? An aunt who loves them unconditionally, an aunt who cares so much that she would do virtually anything for them, and an aunt whom they love and cherish dearly. I am one of those people because my Aunt Dottie was one of those rare aunts. From my very earliest memories all the way through to now, Dottie was there, an important part of my life. She was my mother's sister, and they were always extremely close. They shared many of the same friends and activities, lived nearby, and were together all the time. As a result, our families were very close, and we spent a lot of time at each other's homes and had wonderful times doing all sorts of activities together. At every special occasion, celebration, holiday, and milestone, Dottie and Bill and their family were there. I especially remember the holidays that took place at Dottie's house, which were major events. Dottie would always cook up a storm, and there would be loads of people around her dining room table, always family and often friends, too. There was a lot of love around that table and a lot of very good food. Those holidays for me are happy memories that I treasure. In thinking about time spent at Dottie's house, I am reminded of a silly little story. One day, when my brother Mark and I were very young, aged single digits, we were very angry at my parents for some reason and decided to run away from home together. We put a few things in a little bag and defiantly announced that we were leaving. We then left the house together and started down the block. Upon reaching the corner, we turned to each other and said, "Where should we go?" The answer was almost instant. Dottie's house, of course. Although our little journey never got very far, there was no question that Dottie's house was where we always felt safe, secure, comfortable, loved, and cared for. Years later, when times were not so good and my mom was sick with cancer, Dottie was incredible. She spent so much time and energy providing love and support and making sure my mom had everything she needed. She was truly special. Yesterday, in anticipation of speaking today, I asked my brother Mark about his most remarkable memory of Dottie, and he responded that it was the way after our mom passed away, Dottie stepped right in and was there for us in every way possible, and how she never stopped being there. I feel the same way. It never had to be said, "I love you and I'll be there for you." It was understood. And she came through with flying colors always. A few years later, when I got married, Dottie immediately offered to help with wedding plans. She offered to research florists and venues, and she came with me to pick out my wedding dress, a very special day. At the wedding, she and Bill did me the honor of walking down the aisle. They were two of the most special people in my life, and it meant a lot to me. Through the years, Dottie never stopped offering advice and support, celebrating joyous occasions, and always showing her love. And speaking of advice, Dottie was particularly proud of the extensive traveling that she and Bill had done, and even recently talked about how much she had enjoyed it. She knew that I too liked to travel, and constantly told me, "Travel now, don't wait. Don't wait till you're my age and can't go anymore. Do it now." It was very sound advice, and she was always so excited whenever I went on a trip, and she wanted to hear all about it. The most important thing of all to Dottie was her beloved family. She adored her 3 sons, and whenever she would talk to me about them, the Jewish mother in her came out as she expressed her worries about them. She would ask me, "Are they working too hard? Are they taking enough vacations? Are they happy? Should I do anything that might help them?" She clearly treasured them. And of course, then there are her grandchildren. What a blessing to have 6 grandchildren. And whenever they came up in our conversations, it was clear that they brought her so much joy and was so proud of them. Dottie was such a special person with a great big heart. I feel privileged to be a part of her family. Dottie, today I want to say thank you for everything you have given me. I love you so very much, and we will all miss you dearly.
Grandma Dorothy. It is written in Sota, Gemara, and Talmud, Drash Rav Avira, Beschar Nashim Tzadkaniot, Sheayu Beoto Ador, Nig'alu Yisrael Mitzrayim. Rav Avira taught in the merit of the righteous women that were in that generation, the Jewish people were redeemed from Egypt. An example of this concept can be seen in Parashat Vayekel in the book of Shemot, Exodus, where the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was constructed. During slavery in Egypt, men didn't want to have kids birthed into slavery, so it was the Jewish woman who held on and had faith, giving food, words of encouragement to their husbands, and they used mirrors to make themselves beautiful. Women gave the copper from their mirrors to be used as metal for the Mishkan. Though Moshe did not want the mirrors which the women had used to entice their husbands, Hashem disagreed and told Moshe it would be used in the kier that the Kohanim used before the avodah, them when they did work. So it was the woman that held on and had faith in this time while keeping the Jews together. When I think of Grandma Dorothy, a strong woman who I am so lucky to call my grandmother, she encapsulated the traits which our female ancestors had of resilience. She was a tough woman that survived a lot, like my father said. On top of this, she had a sense of such graciousness and elegancy to herself that I wish to have myself. She was never pessimistic about anything, and even if I could tell she didn't like something, she would say, "Oh, that's so unique," instead, to stay polite, or "Oh, that's just wonderful." She taught me traits of patience, kindness, politeness, and grace. She was such a strong woman, like our Jewish mothers have been for generations, and I am so lucky to have had such a wonderful grandmother, and will always cherish her memory and share the same qualities she had with my own children someday. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was beautiful. Did anyone else want to speak at this time? If not, I want to confess that, there's nothing that I could say that hasn't so eloquently and lovingly, beautifully, tenderly, and honestly and said by her children and grandchildren and her niece. But there is something I'd like to read. There is a Hasidic custom that every night before a person goes to bed, they recite a psalm. But not just any psalm, there's 150, so how do you choose? So this particular custom says you recite the psalm that corresponds to your age plus 1, because that represents the number of years you've walked this earth. I hope Dorothy wouldn't mind me divulging that she was 96 and a half when she passed away. It was a good long life, maybe not long enough for those who knew her, but certainly a blessed life. So in her honor, I'd just like to take a moment, and I'll read in the English, Psalm 97, which of course is also a psalm that we recite every Friday night as part of the Kabbalat Shabbat service. Adonai is sovereign. Let the world rejoice. God's throne is founded on justice. Though God be clouded from view, divine justice reveals God's presence. God's lightning illumes the earth. Fire consumes God's foes. Mountains melt like wax before Adonai. The earth trembles. The heavens proclaim God's righteousness. All people behold God's majesty. Shame covers those who worship idols, those who take pride in revering images, which must themselves bow low before God. Hearing of your judgments, Adonai, Zion exalts, and the cities of Judah rejoice. You are supreme over all the earth, highly exalted beyond all that is worshipped. Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the faithful and saves them from the wicked. Light is stored for the righteous, joy for the honorable. Rejoice in Adonai, you who are righteous. Acclaim the holiness of God's name. Or Zaru Elat Tzadik L'Shrei Lev Simcha Simchut Tzadim Banai V'Hodu L'Zecher Kodsho. And from what I know about Dorothy, I was honored to see her at some smachot, some happy occasions, and also Yamim Noraim. I saw how much she loved her children and grandchildren, the care she took with her 3 sons, how proud she was, of course, of Gary, and of course, who could not be proud of Jeff and Eric, the Jewish doctors. And of course her daughter-in-laws as well, Jewish doctors. I think in some respects are more like daughters to her than the in-laws part. She was a storehouse of righteousness and of light, right? And her light is sown yet ahead. She's united with her beloved husband. She's waiting down for all of us, illuminating the way. And as Jeff said about optimists, that's how you find a solution, a salvation in the midst of a tragedy. I'd also like to recite at this time in her honor. I'm going to call up Cantor Yossi Caravani to lead us in Eshet Chayil. It's the last 22 verses of the book of Proverbs, chapter 31. According to tradition, it was penned by King Solomon, and husbands would often recite it Friday night at the dinner table to their wives. I'll recite the verses in English after he's concluded, because I think from what I've been told about Dorothy, it describes her to a T.
אשת חיים ימצא, רחוק מפניני, מכרה בטח בלב בעלה, בשלה לא יחסר, גמלה טוב טוב ולא רע, כל ימי חיי אדם. ותעש בחפץ כפיה, הייתה כאוניות סוחר, ממרחק תביא לחמה, ותקום בעוד לילה, ותיתן טרף ותבחר גנורותיה, זמה מסדה ותיקחהו, הפיקה פנה תוחרם, חגרה בעוז בנותניה, ותעמוד זרועותיה, תמה כי טוב סחרה, לא יכבה בלילה נרה, ידיה שילך בקישור, וכפיה תמכו פלך, כפה פרסה לעני, וידיה שילך לאביון, לא תירא לבית משלה, כי כל ביתה לבושמים. מרבדים עשתה לה, שש ורגמה לבושה, נודע בשערים בעלה, בשבטו עם זקני הארץ, סדין עשתה ותמכור, וחגור נתנה לה כנעני, עוז ועדה לבושה, ותשחק ליום אחרון, פיה פתחה בחוכמה, בתורת חסד על לשון, הצולפיה הלכות ביתה, ורחם עצלותו תאכל, קמו בניה ואשרוה, בעלה והלילה, רבות בנות אותו חיל, והטלית על כולה הנה, שקר החל, והבל היופי, אישה יראת אדוני, היא תתהלל תנו לה, מפרי ידיה, ויהללו בשערים מעשיה.
Yaakov. What a precious find is an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband would put confidence in her, and she would lack no good thing. She was good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. She would open her hand to the needy and extend her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She would look to the future cheerfully. She would open her mouth with wisdom, and her tongue would be guided by kindness. She covers the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children would come forward and bless her. Her husband praised her and said, "Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty, it's fleeting. But a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand, and wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise." Before we conclude here, I also just want to make a special acknowledgement and welcome. I know it's an honor on behalf of the family to have Rabbi Polakov of the Greatness Synagogue. It's an honor to have you here in the sanctuary on behalf of the cantor and myself. I also want to mention that the interment will be taking place immediately following here at New Montefiore Cemetery. The casket shortly will be escorted from the room here to the waiting hearse. So if you're following us up to the cemetery, we're going to start to line up just outside as part of the processional. So try to go when we've concluded here directly to your cars if you can. I also just want to announce the Shiva times, which will begin just after the graveside service. So I'm not being rude, it's on my phone, that's why. The Shiva will be sitting today at Dr. Eric and Amy's house at 9 Tatum Way in Old Westbury. And the code for the gate is 363. Is that correct? 363. Yes, okay. They're sitting today 4 to 8 p.m., Thursday and Friday. Tomorrow also from 4 to 8 p.m., and then Friday from 2 to 4 p.m., and then we suspend Shiva, so to speak, for a bit because of Shabbat. But there will be an evening service on Wednesday and Thursday at 4:45 at their house. Tomorrow, the morning minyan is here, 7:15 a.m. in the small chapel. And then Shiva continues. It's Sunday and Monday will be at Karen and Dr. Eric Shakin's house at 19 Arley Road, Great Neck. Sunday, 2 to 7 p.m., and Monday 2 to 7 p.m. And family has requested that in lieu of flowers, donations can be made in Dorothy Shakin's name to Alzheimer's Association, or if you want to make it to the synagogue here or Great Neck Synagogue, please feel free to do so. And I do want to request that at this time, everyone please rise. The cantor is going to lead us in the Hebrew in El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמת דבורה בת יעקב הכהן שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
El Malei Rachamim, exalted compassion, God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Dorothy Shirley Shakin, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May Dorothy's soul be bound up in the bond of life. May Dorothy rest in a most well-deserved peace. And let us all say, Amen. I'd also like to request that all extended family and friends just remain standing for the time being, but I'd like to call up Dorothy's immediate family, her sons Eric and Jeff, and I know Gary's not here at the moment, but if you want to come forward as we escort her casket, if the grandchildren want to join as well, as we escort her casket from here to the waiting hearse.